Set in 19th century Italy, a biochemist travels to a remote castle to become a lab assistant to the Baron, but she's unaware that she has put herself in danger. One night, a drunk villager wanders into town, but he quickly sobers up after he sees a man resembling the Baron passing by a house with his dogs. He fears that someone might have become his prey, so he proceeds to check inside the said residence. There, he discovers a woman's lifeless body that is covered in blood, cementing his suspicion that the Baron is the culprit. The following day, while the town mourns the woman's death, one of the villagers points out that she's the fourth person who perished, so he suggests that they burn the Baron's castle. Inspector Zarek overhears the conversation, and he contemplates about the villagers' opinion. On the other hand, Ivan Rukowski, a biochemist who has arrived in town, inquires the two bystanders if they know any driver who can take her to the Zlhaj castle. Upon hearing this, they feign ignorance so that they won't bother offering her a ride. Ivana is willing to pay any amount, but they remain firm in their refusal. Not backing down, Ivana asks the other residents if they can take her to the Baron's castle, but again, she fails to bag a driver. She tries to entice them with money, but none of them takes the bait. At that moment, Fedor takes the money from her hand and offers to give her a ride using his funeral wagon. Shortly after, the pair arrives under the bridge that leads to the castle, and Fedor informs Ivana that Baron Igor passed away in the fire in his laboratory last spring. The woman is confused because she believes Igor hired her, but Fedor explains that Janos, Igor's younger brother, was the one who did it. He warns her that Janos is an evil man, for he assumes he's the culprit for the recently deceased woman in their town. Based on his observation of the woman's injuries, Fedor believes Janos took advantage of the woman and threw her to his dogs. He adds that all of the women who loved him suffer the same fate. Still, Ivana remains skeptical, for she can't fathom how someone can commit such a deed. Fedor shares that Janos must have inherited his family's mental illness, which he thinks contributed to his wickedness. To support his claims, Fedor informs her that the villagers speculate that Janos set his brother's laboratory on fire. Suddenly, Fedor tries to take advantage of Ivana, but his attempt turns futile as he hears Baron Janos crossing the bridge. Out of fear that his life might be at risk, Fedor leaves her, apathetic to the woman's fate. Not long after, inside the Baron's castle, Olga, the housekeeper, doubts that Ivana has been hired to become the Baron's assistant, believing that she's incapable. Insulted, Ivana rummages through her suitcase to locate her contract. She shows the document to Olga, but the woman remains untrusting of her, so she tries to send her away. Before things escalate, Baron Janos appears and prevents Olga from sending Ivana away. The housekeeper explains that Ivana is unwanted, but Janos thinks it's best to let her remain in the castle for the night to show their hospitality. Then, he orders Olga to take Ivana back to the village and hand her a month's worth of salary as compensation for her. Upon hearing his words, Ivana opposes it and encourages him to honor his commitments, emphasizing that he has signed the contract. The Baron stubbornly refuses to listen, so Ivana assures him that she's the perfect person for the job. Determined to convince the Baron, she assures him that the rumors circulating around him don't concern her. Later, in Janos' room, Olga confronts him about hiring a female biochemist, but the Baron simply dismisses her. Olga admits that she fears she'll be replaced in his heart, as she's still hanging on to the thought that he'll love her again. To her dismay, Janos reprimands her for getting hopes up and declares that their romance is over. Meanwhile, in Ivana's room, the biochemist asks Christiana about what she thinks of the Baron. Excitedly, the housekeeper describes Janos as a marvelous man, which makes Ivana suppose she's in love with him. Her observation takes Christiana aback, so the housekeeper abruptly bids her farewell. Now alone, Ivana starts to get dressed, but she's still thinking of Christiana's amusing reaction to her comment. Unbeknownst to her, a person is observing her with desire through a hidden opening on the wall. By dinner time, Ivana observes the strange marks on Janos' dogs, so she inquires him about them. The Baron is unsure of what has caused them, but he assumes they're from poisonous wild plants that hurt their skin whenever they accompany him in the woods. However, Ivana believes that their wounds appear as if they were whipped, which upsets Janos. He reprimands her for trying to accuse him of mistreating his own dogs, but Ivana clarifies that someone clearly does. Back in Ivana's room, the woman is confused about why her clothes are stored in the wardrobe, given that she's supposed to leave tomorrow morning. Christiana reveals that it was the Baron's order, as he wants her to stay for a while. This irritates Ivana as she dislikes how the Baron decides for her, so she plans to confront him. In the Baron's study, Janos explains to Ivana that he changed his mind because her expertise as a chemist convinced him that she'd be helpful in his project. Therefore, He invites her to his laboratory to let her check on it. Once they reach the laboratory, Janos informs Ivana that Igor based his experiments on the fundamental principle that matter is never destroyed but only transformed. With this in mind, Janos reveals that he hired her to discover a formula capable of regenerating his brother's charred corpse. Ivana points out the complexity of the project, especially since they'll be working from scratch. Even so, Janos is determined that his plans will work, as they have other studies and theories they can apply. The biochemist agrees to try it, but she's skeptical it will help Igor, as she assumes his corpse is beyond saving. To prove her wrong, Janos shows her Igor's intact body submerged in alcohol and a special compound solution, intriguing the woman. Later that evening, Ivana reads a book while she drinks a glass of milk prepared for her. Suddenly, she feels nauseous, so she plans to sleep to ease her discomfort. Pushing through her queasiness, she tries to extinguish the candles, but she knocks off the candelabra using her book as she passes out. Just as she regains consciousness, she feels confused, for she finds herself bare and chained to a wooden bed. A man's silhouette catches her attention, so she asks him about what motivated him to bring her into the chamber. Instead of answering, the man grabs a branding iron and threatens to use it on her if she refuses to obey him. The next day, at the police station, investigator Zarek interrogates Fedor about Ivana's disappearance. He accuses him of taking advantage of her before ending her life, but Fedor denies it. He eventually admits to having an ulterior motive for Ivana, but he insists that the Baron is the culprit for her alleged death. Inspector Zarek acknowledges his account, but he sentences him to prison for his wicked attempt on the biochemist. Following this, the village's mayor believes they should check on Ivana's well-being at the castle. Zarek refuses because he avoids wrongly accusing Janos of a crime based on some fickle rumors. Zarek's subordinate supports the mayor's advice, explaining that he has witnessed the injuries from the women's bodies, which resemble claw marks from the Baron's dogs. Hence, he firmly recommends that they conduct a discreet investigation of the Baron's castle. Elsewhere, Ivana threatens Olga with speaking with the authorities about spiking her milk. Olga accuses her of merely dreaming, pointing out that the milk is untouched. Ivana feels frustrated because of Olga's dismissal, so she recounts that she remembers trying to put out the candles, but they fell to the floor. Again, Olga finds her story absurd because the candles remain erected on the candelabra. Ivana starts to doubt herself, but Olga interrupts her thoughts by informing her that police officers are at the gate looking for her. In an act of mockery, she encourages the woman to report her alleged experience. Moments later, Ivana meets with investigator Zarek and requests him to be lenient in punishing Fedor. Zarek then requests that she open the gates for them so they can help her sign a document regarding her statement. However, Olga sees through their deceit, so she prevents Ivana from obeying him. Shay urges Ivana to sign the papers in her current location, explaining that she doesn't want to open the gates because she is afraid the dogs might escape. After Ivana signs the document, Olga informs her that Janos is waiting for her at the laboratory. But before she can leave, the housekeeper reminds Ivana of her plan to report her bizarre experience last night. To her surprise, Ivana merely reports that she's well taken care of, as she starts to believe everything was just a dream. At the laboratory, Ivana shares with Janos that she had an awful nightmare last night. The Baron apologizes for not warning her about the solution that conserves Igor's body. He explains that the liquid contains hallucinogenic power, so he hands her a mask to prevent her from inhaling the fumes. During the night, Ivana flushes the milk into the toilet to prevent the same nightmare from happening again. But when she starts to prepare for the night, a sleep-inducing gas pours out of the opening, causing Ivana to lose consciousness. Again, she awakens and finds herself inside a darkened chamber, chained. The woman starts to feel threatened, but a disfigured man proceeds to touch her and voices that she must stay pure. The next day, Janos is surprised that his dogs are warming up with Ivana, especially since they aren't fond of strangers. Ivana shares that she has examined the marks on the dogs, and she firmly believes that someone has whipped them. Janos feels threatened by her remark, so he accuses her of having nightmares again. She confirms that she indeed had one, so Janos reminds her to use the mask he gave her. Before he leaves for work, he hands her the equation he's been working on and asks for her opinion if it's correct. Ivana compliments Janos on his ability to comprehend her equations. Like her, Janos is delighted by her work ethic, but he advises her to take it easy because he fears she will overwork herself. Once Janos leaves for his work, Ivana continues to scan his equation, but she notices something trivial about it. Hence, the woman heads to a room with a wooden corridor just in time for her to catch his attention. However, Janos is displeased to find her there, so he orders her to leave the area. He returns inside the castle and reprimands her for entering the room, for he emphasizes that the other side of the door is forbidden. His warning leads Ivana to assume that he's the culprit for the women's passing in the village. Provoked, Janos explains that the wing is ruined, so it might cause her to fall to her death if she made a mistake. That night of the full moon, Christiana sneaks into the cellar to make love with Janos. After the deed, she wakes up and finds Janos standing beside her, so she reaches for his hand. As she misses his warmth, she becomes terrified when she discovers that a disfigured hand tightens around her. Afraid that her screams will attract unnecessary attention, the disfigured man ends her life using his clawed gauntlets. Meanwhile, a curious Ivana reads a book about lycanthropy at the Baron's library. She starts to believe that Janos is the one who captured her. To find evidence that will confirm her hunch, Ivana creeps into the chamber behind the forbidden door. There, she's shocked because it houses the wooden bed where she's chained whenever she's held captive. Out of nowhere, a gust of wind extinguishes the candlelight, and a man's silhouette appears, scaring her. Immediately, Ivana sprints back to her room, but upon reaching her door, she meets Janos. He tries to calm the panicking woman, but she passes out due to fear. Without a choice, Janos takes her to bed and gently encourages her to recuperate so they can talk tomorrow. Not long after, Olga patiently waits for Janos to leave Ivana's room, and she invites him to spend the night with her. Inside her room, Olga proceeds to disrobe as a way to seduce him, and she takes the lamp to see his face. Unfortunately for her, it's the disfigured man, and he proceeds to end her life. The following morning, Inspector Zarek requests Janos to allow them to investigate the room behind the forbidden door. Janos prevents them and lies that the area is dangerous as a result of the fire. For this reason, Zarek decides to interrogate Ivana instead to find more information. During the interrogation, Zarek asks Ivana if she was aware of the killings last night, but she denies it, emphasizing that she remained in her room. The inspector then wonders if she knows Janos' whereabouts the previous night, as he's the main person of interest in the case. Surprisingly, Ivana covers for him by lying about how they spent the night together. After the interrogation, Janos expresses his gratitude to Ivana for rescuing him from an unjust accusation. He's also thankful that she doesn't consider him the culprit for harming Olga and Christiana. Contrary to his assumption, Ivana actually thinks he's responsible for their passing, as she concludes that he possesses two personalities. Janos tries to deny it, but Ivana shows him the book about lycanthropy. She hypothesizes that a strange force influences him to commit such atrocities. Angered by her claims, Janos explains that he doesn't dispute the book, but it doesn't apply to him. He emphasizes that he never had lapses of memories, but Ivana thinks his two personalities are distinct and unaware of each other's existence. Therefore, she invites him to visit the laboratory to create a possible cure. Later, in the laboratory, Ivana explains that the full moon last night might have affected him. With this in mind, she also supposes that Janos' obsession with resurrecting his brother has caused tension in his brain. She also takes into account the substances he's exposed to, particularly the liquid that preserves Igor's body, which is one of the catalysts that has created Janos' two personalities. Right away, Ivana destroys Igor's body with a stick, causing Janos to break down. Ivana expresses that she just wants to help him, but Janos senses that there's a deeper reason why she's gentle on him. That day, Janos comments on how carefree Ivana is around him, given that she thinks he can transform into a monster. She's confident that he won't hurt him because she remembers her dream where, despite chaining her, he simply caresses her. Janos is in disbelief at what she has shared, so he demands that she elaborate on her dream. In compliance, Ivana recounts that he has a rougher voice, but his silhouette is unmistakable. Upon learning of this, Janos races down to the forbidden chamber and confronts Igor. He chastises him for causing the numerous passing of women that are linked to him. Igor finds him naive for realizing it late, but Janos never considers such a possibility because he knows he's locked in the chamber. Now, Janos questions why he committed such atrocities, and Igor reveals that it's revenge for how he's been treated. It turns out that Igor harbors hatred toward Janos because he gets the privilege of fooling around. As an act of justice for himself, Igor reveals that he ends the lives of women who sleep with Janos and frames him as the culprit. Betrayed, Janos threatens to report him to the authorities, but Igor reminds him of their oath to their mother, that they'll always help each other. Igor then pleads for help from him and Ivana to fix his appearance. However, Janos refuses to include Ivana in their business anymore, but Igor refuses to acknowledge it. He stakes his claim on Ivana, but Janos objects to it, infuriating him. Igor thinks that Ivana is unsuitable for Janos because she's too pure for him. To put a distance between Igor and Ivana, Janos threatens to send her away. Igor ignores his threats and proceeds to hand him a paper containing the equation he created. He reminds Janos of his lack of knowledge in chemistry and orders him to let Ivana continue the project. Following this, Janos meets with Ivana and proposes to her just to prevent Igor from claiming her. In a heartbeat, Ivana agrees to marry him, much to his delight. The next day, after their wedding ceremony, the couple realizes that Inspector Zarak, alongside his associates, is scattered around the area to observe them. Zarak assumes that the couple got married so that they can gain a spousal privilege, wherein the other can't testify against their spouse. He orders his associates to remain still because he's sure the couple is guilty of committing wicked deeds. Suddenly, Fritz, Christiana's father and the former butler in the castle, shoots Janos as revenge for his daughter. Fritz orders Ivana to leave Janos as he wants to finish him. Before he can land another shot, Zarak and his men intervene. By the evening, after his wounds are tended, Janos swears to Ivana that he never harmed the deceased women. Ivana assures him that she trusts him fully, and that's why she married him. Since it's their wedding night, Ivana reminds him to consummate it, so she proceeds to extinguish the candles in their room. During the deed, Janos is disturbed when he hears his dogs and horses in distress. He thinks that the villagers are attacking them as retaliation for his alleged crime, so he decides to deal with them. Unbeknownst to him, Igor is the one who whips them. Once Janos arrives at the barn, Igor strikes him with a whip and restrains him using a rope. Igor is infuriated that he took Ivana from him, so he decides to reclaim her. In the couple's room, Igor finds Ivana lying on the bed, patiently waiting to consummate her marriage with Janos. Because the room is dimly lit, she mistakes Igor for Janos, whom she encourages to make love to her. Igor simply caresses her, for he wants her to remain pure. However, a clueless Ivana voices her desire for Janos, which infuriates Igor. Confused by his reaction, Ivana grabs a lamp to see him, but she becomes terrified when she discovers a disfigured man. Due to fear, Ivana drops the lamp, causing the fire to scatter on the floor. The fire reminds Igor of his life-threatening experience, so he begs Ivana to extinguish it. Just in time, Janos arrives, and he encourages Ivana to leave while he deals with his brother. A fight ensues between them, and Igor, who's seething in anger, gains the upper hand against Janos. Not wanting to surrender, Janos grabs Igor and throws him on the bed. The impact causes the burning bed drapes to fall over him, leading the fire to engulf him once more. Now that Igor's evilness is over, Ivana approaches her husband and consoles him.